Your role is eliminated. Cal said it in the room like he was announcing a calendar change. Glass walls, a long table, coffee that tasted burnt, a tray of pastries nobody touched once my name was spoken. There were maybe 24 of us in there, project leads, ops managers, a couple of finance people who looked like they hadn't slept in days. Integration season, new logo on the slide deck, new synergies in every sentence, the same old fear under the polish. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't make a scene. I nodded once like I was accepting a compliment I didn't deserve. Because in that moment, I still believed the cut was about headcount. I didn't understand yet that the real mistake wasn't ending my job. It was leaving my name attached to a live risk after they took away my ability to control it. The part that still messes with me is how ceremonial it felt. Cal stood at the front with his hands folded, calm, clean, practiced. HR was present, of course. Miranda sat with her laptop open, the kind of neutral face you learn to wear when you've watched too many people go pale. My manager, Brent, didn't sit beside me. He sat across the table, eyes down, like the wood grain was suddenly fascinating. Cal clicked to a slide titled Org Alignment. He didn't say layoffs. He didn't say firing. He said streamlining. Then he looked at me. Your position is being eliminated effective immediately. No warning, no pre-call, no private conversation. Just my name, spoken out loud in front of coworkers who now had to decide whether looking at me would infect them. I forced my mouth into something that looked like professionalism. I understand, I said. Cal nodded once, already moving on to the next bullet point, like my life was a line item. When the meeting ended, the room emptied fast. People avoided contact the way they do when something bad happens in public and nobody wants to admit they saw it. Brent finally caught up to me in the hallway. Hey, he said, too casual. We'll talk after you get settled. It's just business. I stared at him. Was this your call? I asked. His eyes flicked away. It's above my pay grade. That was his favorite sentence whenever responsibility got heavy. We walked back toward my desk, and I felt the shift before I saw it, like the building itself had decided I was already gone. A few doors that used to click open for me didn't. My email on my phone stopped syncing. The internal chat app signed me out and wouldn't let me back in. Miranda appeared near the elevators with a cardboard box and a badge lanyard in her hand, like she'd been waiting for the right moment to make it feel standard. I'm so sorry, she said in the same tone you'd use at a funeral, if you didn't know the person. It has already begun the offboarding process. Brent will coordinate anything you need. Brent didn't look at her. He looked at the box. Just keep it clean, he told me. No all-staff messages, no drama. Drama, I repeated. He shrugged like my reaction was the inconvenience. You know what I mean. I packed in silence, not because I was okay, because there's a specific kind of humiliation that makes you go quiet. When you realize the room isn't waiting for your feelings, it's waiting for you to disappear. Laptop went to IT, notebooks into the box, a spare charger, the framed photo I kept of my dad at my graduation. My hands were steady, but my chest felt hollow, like I was watching myself from the ceiling. As I walked out, I passed the team area, where my group sat. A few people looked up, then immediately looked away. One person, Jenna, from governance, didn't look away. She watched me like she wanted to say something, but her mouth stayed closed. That detail mattered later. He's in the lobby. My badge failed on the turnstile. Security waved me through without even checking my face, like they'd been told not to make it complicated. Outside, cold air hit me hard. I stood by my car with the box against my hip and felt something ugly rise in my throat, not tears. Anger. But I swallowed it. I always swallow it. It's a bad habit I built in corporate life. Feel it later, never now. I tossed the box into the passenger seat and sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. For a full minute, I just breathed. Then my phone buzzed. Not a text, not an email. An automated alert. I almost ignored it out of instinct, like, Why would a system message matter when you've just been erased? But the subject line made my stomach tighten. Control ownership alert. Approval pending. I opened it, and there it was, in plain language that didn't care about Cal's meeting or Miranda's box. Owner. My full name. Control. Data export. Approval gate. The same control I'd been babysitting for months. The one tied to customer data. The one auditors asked about every quarter. The one I had begged Brent to reassign to a role instead of a person. Because people get promoted, transferred, terminated, and the company doesn't get to pretend the risk left with them. Brent's response back then had been a single line. We'll circle back. We never circle back. Now I read the alert again. Slower. Approval pending. Escalation timer active. Meaning a clock had started. I tried to log into the governance portal to see what triggered it. Access denied. I tried the secondary console I used for emergency approvals. Access denied. I tried the internal hotline email I remembered. It bounced back. They had cut my access in minutes. But my name was still sitting inside the system like a loaded signature. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred, because suddenly I understood the real shape of what they'd done. They didn't just end my role. They left my accountability alive after they killed my permissions. And if something went wrong, if a breach happened, if an audit finding hit, if a regulator asked who owned that control, there was only one name the system would point to. Mine. Then my phone buzzed again. A second alert. Different subject line. Same owner. Same escalation timer. And the message ended with one sentence that made my throat go dry. Breach window open. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was spiraling, not because I was refreshing job boards at 3 a.m, because every time I closed my eyes, my phone lit up again. Another automated alert, another escalation, another reminder that the company had taken away my hands, but left my fingerprints on the weapon. By sunrise, I had 4 screenshots, each with a timestamp, each showing the same thing. Owner, me, access, revoked, timer, running. I sat at my kitchen table with cold coffee and wrote one sentence at the top of a legal pad. If this explodes, they will try to make it mine. That wasn't paranoia. That was pattern recognition. I'd watched enough root cause meetings to know how the blame funnel works. It narrows fast. It always finds the easiest target, and nothing is easier than a terminated employee who can't defend himself inside the company's walls. But that was just the beginning. At 8:30, my phone rang from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a second call. Then a third. Then an email hit my personal account. Miranda from HR. Subject line. Quick clarification. The message was polite, almost friendly, like yesterday hadn't happened in public. Hi, we need to clarify some transition items connected to your previous responsibilities. Please call me today. Previous responsibilities. I read that phrase twice. It was the kind of language that sounds harmless until you translate it into what it really means. We still want you accountable, even though we don't want you employed. I didn't call her. I did something that probably saved me later. I opened a folder on my laptop and titled it with the date. Then I started a timeline. Meeting, public termination, immediate access removal, first control alert, attempted login, denied, second alert, denied, third alert, denied. I added screenshots. I added the bounced email. I added notes, short, factual, unemotional. Because I've learned something about corporate disasters. The person with the cleanest timeline wins. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Brent. Call me. Urgent. I stared at it for a second, then set the phone down. 2 minutes later, don't make this bigger than it needs to be. There it was. Not concern, not apology, control. I didn't answer. I drove to Ray's place instead. Ray is the kind of friend you keep when your life runs on systems. He used to do internal audits before he moved into consulting. He thinks in risk matrices and worst-case scenarios. The last time I'd seen him, he'd told me, half joking, if your employer ever smiles too much, screenshot everything. When I walked into his kitchen, he took one look at my face and said, "You got cut." "Yesterday," I said, dropping my phone on the counter. "But the system didn't get the memo." He picked it up and scrolled through the alerts. His jaw tightened. "They left you as control owner," he said. "Yes." "And removed your access," he said, already knowing. "Yes." He set the phone down gently like it was fragile. "That's not sloppy," he said. "That's dangerous." The anger that had been sitting in my chest since yesterday finally found words. "I warned them," I said, "months ago. I told Brent the owner field shouldn't be a person. It should be a role. You don't tie critical controls to a name. Names get fired." Ray leaned back and nodded slowly. "Do you have it in writing?" I hesitated. Then I opened my email archive and searched for the sentence I remembered typing. There it was. My message to Brent, polite and detailed. The control, the risk, the recommendation to assign ownership to a role, and set up a monitored mailbox for escalations. His reply was one line. "Noted. We'll circle back." Ray let out a quiet laugh, but there wasn't anything funny in it. "That line," he said, tapping the screen, "is going to matter." I felt my irritation sharpen into something cleaner, focused, cold, because suddenly I could see the shape of their plan. In the room, they ended my job. In the system, they left my name. If something broke, they could say, "We eliminated the position, but the owner was still him. He didn't complete the handoff. He didn't transition properly." And the worst part, it would sound believable to anyone who didn't understand how access removal works. They could paint me as careless, vindictive, uncooperative, a fired guy who refused to help. Ray pushed a notepad toward me. "Write down who else knows you own that control. Names, titles." I started listing Jenna in governance, 2 engineers who routed the export workflow, a compliance analyst who always asked questions in audit prep. Then I stopped, because I remembered Jenna's face yesterday, watching me walk out like she wanted to say something. Ray noticed. "What?" "Jenna saw me get walked," I said. "She knows I lost access, and she works in governance." Ray nodded. "That's a witness." Witness. That word made my stomach tighten, because I wasn't trying to build a case. I was trying to survive one. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Brent. "You still own the approval chain. We need you to clear it." I stared at the message until my hands started to shake, not from fear, but from pure disbelief. He wasn't even pretending anymore. He was asking me to accept responsibility in writing. Ray read over my shoulder. "Do not reply to him directly," he said. "You need to go around him." "Around him to who?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. "Compliance," he said. "Not HR, not your manager. Compliance." My heart thudded once. Because compliance is the one part of a company that doesn't care about feelings or power games. They care about audit trails. They care about exactly one thing. If this ends up in a regulator's hands, does the story still make sense? Ray pointed at the screen. "You're going to send a single message. Factual. Calm. No emotion. No accusations. Just reality." He dictated the structure like he'd done it 1,000 times. State the facts. State the risk. State the limitation. Request written confirmation. I typed it up, reading each sentence out loud to make sure there was no heat in it. I am no longer employed as of yesterday. My access to the governance portal and approval systems has been revoked. The control still lists me as owner and is generating active escalation alerts. I cannot perform approvals or remediate. Please confirm in writing that ownership and escalation routing will be reassigned immediately. I attached the screenshots. Then I sat there with my finger hovering over send. Because I knew what pressing that button would do. It would pull real people into a problem that Brent and Cal were trying to keep contained. It would force someone to ask the question they were trying to avoid. Why was a terminated employee still listed as accountable for a live control? I looked at Ray. He nodded once. Send it. So I did. No drama, no threats, just a clean record. The email went out, and for the first time since yesterday, I felt something like control return. Not over the company, not over the situation, but over the narrative. Because now, if they tried to blame me, there would be a timestamp message proving I did the exact opposite of negligence. I warned them. I documented. I escalated. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Unknown number. Then another. Then another. Then Brent called again, and this time he didn't text. He left a voicemail. His voice was tight, polite in that way people get when they're close to losing their leverage. Hey, we need to talk. You didn't have to loop in compliance. Call me back. I listened to it twice, not because I cared what he said, because I could hear the panic hiding underneath his tone. And that's when the second realization hit me, hard enough to make me sit still. If he was panicking, it meant one thing. Someone important had seen my email, and now the clock wasn't just running in the system. It was running on them. The first call from compliance came before lunch. Not HR, not Brent. Compliance. A woman introduced herself as Sloan, and her voice had that controlled calm people get when they've already read the documents, and they're calling to confirm the part that makes it real. Is this Daniel Mercer? She asked. Yes. I'm calling about the control ownership alert you escalated this morning, she said. Can you confirm you're no longer employed by the company? I glanced at the cardboard box still sitting in the passenger seat of my car. I was terminated yesterday, I said, in person, in a room. Understood, she replied, typing. Can you confirm you currently do not have access to the governance portal, approval console, or the export workflow? I can confirm I can't access anything, I said. I tried. It's denied. There was a short pause. And yet the control owner field lists you as accountable, she said, not as a question. Yes. Another pause, longer this time. The kind that told me she was looking at the same screen I'd been staring at all night. Were you informed that you would remain responsible for approvals after termination? She asked. I almost laughed, but it came out as air through my nose. No, I said. I was walked out. My badge stopped working before I reached the lobby. Okay, she said softly, then more direct. Do you have documentation that you raised concerns about the control being assigned to you personally rather than a role? My throat tightened. Yes, I said. I have the email. Please forward it to me, she said, and do not attempt to access any systems. I want a clean boundary here. A clean boundary. For the first time since yesterday, someone in authority said a sentence that protected me instead of trapping me. I forwarded the chain from my kitchen table, including Brent's reply, one line that now looked like a loaded gun. Noted. We'll circle back. Sloan responded within minutes. Received. Thank you. That was it. No sympathy, no apology. Just acknowledgement. And somehow that felt better than any corporate sorry for the inconvenience ever could. But that relief didn't last. Because once compliance had the facts, I started getting the other calls. The ones that weren't about fixing the risk, but about controlling the story. Brent called again. This time I answered, not because I wanted to hear him, but because I wanted to know what lie he was about to offer. His voice was strained, too friendly. Hey, he said, we can handle this without making it a whole thing. A whole thing, I repeated. You know what I mean, he said quickly. Compliance doesn't need to be dragged into every transition hiccup. Hiccup? I said. My name is on a live control and I can't touch the system. That's not a hiccup. He exhaled, sharp. Look, just help us close the pending approvals. Then it's done. I can't, I said. You removed my access. It did, he snapped, then tried to soften it. Fine, but you can tell them you'll cooperate, that you'll stay available. There it was. He wasn't asking me to fix the system. He was asking me to reattach myself to the blame. I realized in that moment what he needed from me. A sentence he could point to later. He said he'd help. He agreed to stay on the hook. He didn't follow through. I kept my voice flat. Communicate in writing, I said. I'm not discussing anything verbal. He went quiet for a beat. Then he tried the oldest trick in corporate management. Morality. Don't do this, he said. People are working hard. You're going to create chaos. I stared at my kitchen wall while he talked, and something in me finally cracked. Not in a dramatic way. In a clean way. Like a rope snapping after being pulled for too long. That's not my job anymore, I said. His tone changed instantly colder. So you're just going to walk away? I was walked out, I said. You want me responsible? Give me access. You want me silent? Remove my name? Pick one. He didn't answer. He hung up. And the moment the line went dead, I felt a small, ugly wave of relief. That night, I stopped being the hero. I stopped trying to help people who were willing to sacrifice me to save themselves. By late afternoon, Sloan emailed again, looping in an AT lead named Marcus and someone from HR governance I didn't recognize. Subject line: immediate control ownership reassignment. Action required. 3 lines. They were investigating why the owner field hadn't been updated. They were initiating an emergency reassignment, and they needed to understand the chain of approval that kept my name locked in place. Marcus called me 10 minutes later. He sounded tired, the way engineers sound when they inherit a mess that shouldn't exist. I'm looking at the governance record, he said. Your control is configured as named owner, not role owner. That's why the termination workflow didn't move it. I recommended role ownership months ago, I said. I see a change request, he said, and I could hear clicking. It's interesting. What's interesting? I asked. It's been sitting in pending status, he said, for weeks. Pending with who? I asked, already feeling my stomach drop. He hesitated like he wasn't supposed to say it. Your manager, he said, Brent Halley. My hands went cold, because that was the missing piece. Brent didn't forget. Brent didn't get unlucky. Brent had been the gatekeeper of the fix, and he left it pending long enough to become useful. Useful as a trap. Marcus continued, voice careful. I'm not making assumptions. I'm just telling you what the audit trail shows. I swallowed once. So he had the request? I said. He could have approved it. Yes, Marcus said. And if it had been approved, your ownership would have moved to the role group, and the escalations would route to a monitored mailbox, not to you. I stared at the table, seeing the timeline assemble itself like a puzzle that suddenly becomes obvious. Brent ignored the fix, then he let my name stay on the control. Then he watched my access get removed, and if something blew up, he could point to my name like it proved I was still accountable. That realization didn't make me angry. It made me clear. Because now it wasn't just corporate sloppiness. It was a decision. And now what? I asked Marcus. We're moving it, he said. But compliance is involved, so it has to be documented. There's going to be a call. Of course there was. Corporate chaos always becomes a meeting. Before I could respond, another email hit my inbox. This time from Lagel. Subject line: short-term consulting, knowledge transfer. They offered a contract, a quick one, immediate start, a limited scope engagement to support transition. And buried in the middle was the line that made my pulse spike. Consultant acknowledges responsibility to assist in control continuity and approvals as needed. Approvals? They wanted my signature. They wanted me to volunteer for the noose they'd already tightened. I forwarded it to Ray with one sentence. Read this. He called me in under a minute. Do not sign that, he said. That clause is poison. I know, I said. They're trying to make me responsible again. Ray's voice dropped. They're trying to make you responsible on paper. I looked at the screen, then at my folder of screenshots. I thought about Cal's calm voice in that room. I thought about Brent's text. Don't make this bigger. And I thought about how quickly everyone had started calling the moment compliance saw my email. They weren't trying to fix the system. They were trying to fix the story. My phone buzzed again. Calendar invite. Attendees: Sloan, Compliance; Marcus, IT; Miranda, HR; Brent, and Cal. Title: Urgent, Control Ownership and Termination Workflow. I stared at it for a long time, because I understood what that call really was. It wasn't a discussion. It was a blame meeting. And for the first time, Cal was stepping into the room, because the problem had stopped being operational. Now it was political. I didn't know what they were going to try next, but I knew what I was going to do. I was going to walk into that call with facts, timestamps, and a boundary so sharp they couldn't slip my name back into their mess. Because if they wanted chaos, I was about to show them what documented chaos looks like when it points in the right direction. The calendar invite changed 10 minutes before the call. Same title, same urgency. One new attendee, Cal. And that was the moment I knew this wasn't about fixing a control anymore. It was about containing damage. When the call opened, I counted faces the way you count exits. Sloan from Compliance, Marcus from IT, Miranda from HR, Brent, too close to the camera, like he wanted to control the frame, and Cal, sitting back in his chair with that executive calm that's designed to make everyone else feel irrational. Sloan didn't waste time. Daniel was terminated yesterday, she said, looking straight into the camera. His access was revoked immediately, yet the governance platform still lists him as accountable owner for a live escalated control. We need to understand how that happened and correct it with an audit trail. Cal smiled like he'd rehearsed it. We appreciate Daniel's proactive communication. Proactive, like I'd volunteered for this. I kept my voice flat. I reported it because the system is still routing escalations to me while I'm locked out. Brent jumped in fast. We were going to handle it internally. There was just a timing issue. Sloan's expression didn't move. Then the timing issue should be in the log. Marcus shared his screen, and there it was. The governance record. My name locked as owner, escalation timer running, and a change request that I recognized immediately because I wrote it. Request: convert named ownership to role-based ownership and route escalations to a monitored mailbox. Status: pending. Marcus clicked into the approval chain. Approver: Brent. The room went quiet in a very specific way, like everyone had just watched a door close from the outside. Sloan didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Brent, she said, do you recognize this request? Brent's eyes flicked once. Then he nodded like it was nothing. I saw it. We had priorities. Integration was... Stop, Sloan said, calm. This is a regulated control. Priorities is not an answer. Cal leaned forward slightly. Let's stay constructive. The point is fixing it. Sloan didn't look at him. Constructive starts with truth. She clicked the request history. A note field opened, empty. No denial, no comment, no decision, just weeks of inaction. Then Marcus pulled up another log. Termination workflow timestamps. Access revoked, immediate. Ownership reassignment, not triggered. Reason: named owner, not role owner. Dependency: manual approval by manager. Sloan turned to Miranda. HR triggers access revocation, she said. Who owns the governance reassignment step? Miranda swallowed. The direct manager. Sloan looked back at Brent. So the reassignment failed because the manager didn't approve the conversion request, she said. And then the manager allowed termination and access removal to proceed anyway. Brent's face tightened. That's not fair. You're making it sound intentional. I didn't plan to speak, but it came out clean. You texted me to clear approvals after you removed my access, I said. You told me not to make it bigger. That's not a mistake. That's you trying to keep my name on it. Brent snapped his head toward the camera. That is not what... Sloan cut him off again, still calm. Daniel, she said, do you have that message? Yes, I replied, time-stamped. Forward it to me in legal, she said, immediately after this call. Brent went very still. That was the moment I felt it. The first real shift. Not satisfaction, not revenge. Relief? Because for the first time, the record matched reality. And it wasn't just my word against theirs. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. Marcus spoke next, voice practical, like he was trying to pull the team back from the edge. I can fix this today, he said. Convert ownership to the role group. Reroute escalations to a monitored mailbox, and lock named ownership for controls of this tier. But compliance has to sign off, and we need an interim owner with access. Cal immediately said, assign Brent. Sloane's eyes narrowed by a fraction. No. Cal blinked. Why not? Because Brent was the approver who left the fix pending, she said. We're not reassigning the control to the person who sat on the change request. Brent's voice sharpened. So what? You think I'm sabotaging? Sloane didn't flinch. I think the audit trail speaks for itself. Silence again. Cal's jaw flexed once. Miranda tried to soften it. We can assign it to the interim operations lead. Someone with access. Marcus nodded. That works. I'll need written confirmation and an emergency change ticket. Sloane said, You'll get it. Today. Then she turned back to me. Daniel, she said, you are not listed as accountable owner going forward. You will not be asked to approve anything. Do you understand? Yes, I said, and you have no obligation to provide further assistance without a contract. She added, glancing toward Cal like she was daring him to argue. Cal forced a polite smile. Of course, we may request limited consulting for knowledge transfer. I already knew that was coming. Legal already sent me an agreement, I said. It included language about approvals. Cal's smile slipped for half a second. That was a template. Sloane's voice stayed even. Templates can create liability. Remove it. Marcus added. And do not add him back into the owner field. The platform logs it. Permanently. That landed. Cal's eyes flicked to Brent. Quick, sharp. Brent looked away. Sloane continued. We are documenting this incident as a control continuity failure caused by termination workflow gaps and managerial inaction. There will be follow-up. Brent tried one last time. Voice tight. This is turning into a witch hunt. Sloane's answer was simple. No, she said, it's turning into governance. And that was the small catharsis. The moment the company stopped speaking in feelings and started speaking in consequences. The call ended with action items, not apologies. Marcus would implement role-based ownership by end of day. HR would update termination checklists to include governance reassignment. Compliance would produce an incident memo with the audit trail attached. And Brent was assigned exactly one task: provide a written explanation for why the change request remained pending. When the meeting dropped, my phone buzzed again. Email from legal. New subject line. Revised consulting agreement. No mention of approvals. No mention of ownership. Just knowledge transfer, limited scope, short term. And one sentence at the bottom from Cal himself. Please confirm you can start tomorrow. I stared at it, then opened a blank reply, because tomorrow wasn't just about consulting. Tomorrow was about walking back into the building under my terms, while the same people who ended my role in the room tried to pretend they hadn't just been caught leaving my name attached to the risk. And I knew something else too. That incident memo wasn't going to disappear. It was going to land somewhere that mattered. And when it did, someone's title was going to end in the system, not just in a room. By the time I walked back into that building, I wasn't an employee. I was a contractor with a visitor badge, assigned scope of work, and one clause that mattered more than the rate. I would not be listed as owner, approver, accountable party, or emergency backstop for any control. Not temporarily, not until the transition settles. Not ever. Legal tried to keep the agreement simple. My lawyer made it precise. And the moment their counsel accepted the language in writing, I felt the pressure in my chest loosen for the first time since that conference room. Because now there was a boundary that couldn't be rewritten by someone's tone on a phone call. They put me in a small meeting room near IT, No windows, no audience, no pastries this time. Marcus was there with his laptop open, already inside the governance platform. Sloane joined remotely. Miranda sat quietly, eyes on her notes like she was trying to disappear into process. Brent arrived last. He didn't look at me at first. Cal didn't show up, which told me the whole story in one detail. Leadership had moved from, "We can control this," to "We should not be seen near this." Marcus shared his screen and spoke like an engineer trying to make a mess clean. "Here's the current state," he said. "The control is still configured for named ownership. I have an emergency change ticket drafted to convert it to role-based ownership and route escalations to the monitored mailbox for security governance." Sloane's voice came through the speaker, calm and firm. "Proceed once the interim owner is assigned." Miranda cleared her throat. "Interim owner is the operations controls lead role. We've assigned it to Jenna, effective immediately." My stomach tightened at the name, not out of fear, but recognition. Jenna had watched me walk out. She was the witness who wouldn't blink. Marcus nodded. "Perfect. Jenna has access, and it's a role that survives turnover." He clicked through the workflow, narrating each step as it happened. Because when compliance is involved, silence is not your friend. He changed the owner field from my name to the role group. He rerouted the escalation chain to the monitored mailbox. He locked the controls so it couldn't be assigned to an individual without a documented exception. Then he pulled up the audit log, every change stamped, every decision traceable, and right there in the clean record was the line that finally severed the rope around my name. Owner, Operations Controls Lead. Not Daniel Mercer. Sloane exhaled once. Good. Now confirm Daniel's name is removed from all downstream references. Marcus ran a report. Escalation routing, dashboard, owners, notification lists. My name came back in one place, an old distribution list that someone had lazily used as a shortcut months ago. Brent shifted in his chair. Marcus removed it. Sloane said, "Screenshot the final state. Attach it to the incident memo." Miranda typed faster, and just like that, the system stopped pointing at me. Not because anyone felt bad, because the record forced them to. When the technical work was done, Sloane kept the call open for one more item. "Brent," she said, "we still need your written explanation for why the change request to convert named ownership sat pending." Brent's jaw tightened. "I was managing integration priorities. We had limited capacity." Sloane cut in, still calm. "Write that. Include dates. Include why termination proceeded without confirming governance reassignment." Brent's eyes flicked to me for half a second, then away. For a moment, I thought he might apologize. He didn't. He tried something else instead, something quieter and uglier. After the meeting ended, while Marcus and Miranda were packing up, Brent stepped into the hallway with me, low voice, tight smile. "You got what you wanted," he said. "You made your point." I looked at him. I didn't want a point. I wanted my name off a live risk. He leaned closer like we were sharing a secret. "You know how this works. You escalated. Now people are asking questions. You're going to make it hard for yourself out there." That was the last card he had. The implied threat, the invisible blacklist. It would have worked on the version of me that still tried to be liked. I didn't even raise my voice. "You ended my role in a room," I said. "You don't get to keep control of the story after that." His smile faded. Then he walked away like he'd won something anyway. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. 2 days later, Sloane emailed me a copy of the incident memo, redacted where it needed to be, but clear where it mattered. It stated exactly what happened. A regulated control remained assigned to a terminated employee. Access was revoked without governance reassignment. A pending change request had been held without action. The failure created an escalation gap and a continuity risk. Corrective actions were implemented. Role-based ownership, monitored routing, termination checklist updates. No drama, no adjectives, just consequences. I replied with one sentence. Confirmed accurate. Then I invoiced for the contract scope, attached my knowledge transfer notes, and closed the folder on my laptop like I was shutting a door. That should have been the end. But corporate systems have momentum. So does accountability, once it finally starts moving. A week later, Miranda contacted my lawyer with an amended severance offer. More money, neutral reference language. A written statement that I had no ongoing responsibility for any controls after termination. It was the company's way of paying for silence without admitting guilt. I read it twice, then signed. Not because I forgave them, because I refused to keep living inside their mess. That night, Ray called. "Update," he said. I didn't ask which one. I already knew. "Brent's out," Ray said. "Not reassigned. Not transitioned. Out." I stayed quiet. "Cal's still there," Ray added. "But compliance owns his calendar now. Every decision goes through someone who asks for the log." I leaned back in my chair and felt something in my chest finally settle. Not triumph. Relief. Because the fallout wasn't theatrical. It was structural. The kind of karma that doesn't need shouting. Just records. A few weeks later, I started a new job at a company that asked me, on day one, who should own a critical control. I told them the truth. Ownership should be a role, I said. Names are for signatures. Roles are for responsibility. They nodded like it was obvious, and maybe it should have been. Sometimes I think about that conference room, the glass walls, the clean sentence that tried to erase me, the way everyone looked away like my unemployment was contagious. They thought ending my role in the room meant ending my relevance. But systems don't run on speeches. They run on fields, logs, and accountability that either moves correctly or poisons whoever gets trapped beneath it. They left my name in the system after they took away my access. So I did the only thing that actually works in corporate life. I documented. I escalated. I drew a boundary in writing. And I made sure the record told the truth before anyone else could rewrite it. And when the dust settled, there were no unanswered questions. Just one quiet, satisfying fact. My name wasn't the one that ended in the system.